Veiled under the mist, in the Tyume Valley of the Eastern Cape, is the town of Hogsback, and integral to the story of Hogsback is the name of Somerton. This valley offers an insight into a number of case studies that provoke key questions around the issues of land reform and land restitution. This is the case of the Summertons, a South African family correcting the injustices of the past and dealing with the system that keeps failing its people.
I'm Ruby Dawn Lisedi Mbechu, near Somerton. I'm Rotha's daughter. Rotha is the daughter of Albert Richard Somerton. She's the third born of the 4 girls. My great-grandfather Thomas Somerton moved to South Africa in the 1800s, and he settled with his wife Sarah Terwin, who is also from England, and with their sons Albert Richard and John Godfrey.
The Summertons are often regarded as one of the founding families of Hogsback. They were the first family to have a permanent residence set up in the area.
They were basically farmers. They were the first farmers to plant orchards of the cherry tree, the raspberries, the blackberries. They were actually horticulturists, which they introduced to their sons. And they were the founders of Hogsback and basically lived there until they died.
Brothers Albert Richard and John Godfrey Somerton married sisters Harriet and Violet Mdzeke, 2 black women. The unusual pairing is part of the legacy of the Summertons.
The love story, I often, when I'm asked to tell the history of Hogsback, I use it as the iconic romance because it has so many dimensions to it. Love across the colour bar, love for its own sake, and enduring love.
Despite the status held by the Summerton name, for the non-white descendants of Albert Richard, their name could not prevent them from being harassed. The Apartheid government tried all they could do to separate the Summertons, even going so far as reclassifying Albert Richard and his brother from white to coloured.
There was a petition that was signed by over 50 residents of Hogsback pleading that they should not be removed. But because of the Group Areas Act, they were kind of forced to choose between being white or being non-white.
Once the brothers were reclassified as coloured, they faced further stigmatization, and life in the town became difficult for the only non-white family in the area, with the children facing the brunt of the harassment.
And I used to see John and Albert, the handsome, bearded farmers, come into the shop, and I used to wonder why they would sit outside the shop and smoke. And I've only realized since I've looked at the story, the hardness it must have been for those men to come into a shop where they knew that people might shun them.
When they were little, they were taken by a police van to Grahamstown, just so that they could be classified as white or non-white by the colour of their skin and the curliness of their hair. You know, where they actually stood in front of a panel and their hair was stretched to see if it could be classified as white or non-white.
The lines between black and white in South Africa have always been distinct. But what happens to those who lie in between or are neither?
My grandfather was called Bas Jali. Why Bas? But you know, okay, fine, he was white. But even his descendants, his sons, were called Upasjalo, okanye upassport. You know, so on the one side, we were rejected. On the other side, we were accepted. But it created confusion because where we were accepted was normally a position for the white person. Come what may, you can classify us as coloured or non-white or whatever. We are not giving up our wives, we are not giving up our families.
On the Somerton property, the family that couldn't be together in life rests as one in death.
It's a family cemetery for both brothers. So that kind of still keeps that sentiment towards the property. From time to time, twice a year, we meet there for a braai or a dinner. And yes, we will always have our sentiments towards the property. We were born and bred there.
Post-1994 South Africa has been in the progress of readdressing the issues of the past. The problem is that the systems in place continue to subject victims to further pain.
It's been very frustrating, and there's no accountability, and it's traumatic for us, because as much as the Group Areas Act was traumatic, we at least thought with our government that's in place, things would be better, but I think it's even worse.
Lawyer Cecile van Schalkwyk, who is assisting Ruby with her ongoing land claim case, provides an explanation as to why 20-odd years later, the Somerton claim has still not been resolved.
In our experience, what really has been the biggest problem is the fact that the institution that is supposed to address these issues and are supposed to move claims forward doesn't function.
Do you know, no amount of money can compensate for the heartache, the trauma, just the emotional baggage that we carry. No amount of money.
Land restitution forms part of the larger land reform project that was envisioned after 1994, with with kind of trying to redress some of the old inequalities that were created by the apartheid system. So under the apartheid system, of course, a lot of people lost property because of racially discriminatory laws and practices. So the idea behind land restitution is that we are supposed to be giving back that property to successful claimants.
The late Albert Richard Summerton owned vast tracts of land in Hogsback. He was forced to sell parts of his land in terms of the Group Areas Act of 1950, as he was no longer classified as white. The only property the family managed to retain was Cherry Orchard.
For us at Cherry Orchard, we still own the property. And we've put a land claim in since 1995, and we are still waiting. It's been 20 odd years now, and nothing's happened. Nobody can explain to me why since 1995 there's been no word from them. As far back as last year, October, when the spokesperson for the family, Ivy Apollos, who's based in Port Elizabeth, she took it up with the Land Claims Commission, and it was only then that they started to fiddle.
The process of going through a restitution sort of claim, what usually is supposed to happen is that the Commission on the Restitution of Land Rights is supposed to do an investigation and is supposed to do a research report on the claim. And the sad part of all of that is that very often your claimants are old people. They are people who are elderly, and oftentimes what you'll find in these claims is the large majority of original claimants have already passed away.
Part of how we deal with issues of the past is to make sure what was done is never forgotten nor repeated, is to look to the future.
People that have been born and bred in Hogsback, we would like to plough back into the community of Hogsback. It would have been good if the land was there to create opportunities, especially for the elderly and women and children of Hogsback, build schools, build proper clinics, create projects for women of the valley, skills development, to attract that kind of possibility opportunities for the women, elderly and children of Hogsback.
It's 2019, and although we've taken many strides as a country, the individual pain inflicted can still be felt.
To those that caused this pain, I forgive you. I know it sounds strange. I forgive you because what else can I say?